You know that feeling, right? Where your mind is just buzzing, maybe ruminating, maybe a bit anxious, even when everything outside seems fine. It's that constant mental noise. We all get it. But what if the real source of that struggle isn't quite what we assume? Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're jumping into something really fascinating, inspired by Joseph Nguyen's book, Don't Believe Everything You Think. I've got a summary here, chapter by chapter. And our mission really is to pull out those core nuggets, those aha moments that can genuinely change how you relate to your own mind. We want to help you understand, the mechanics behind suffering and find ways to get to a more peaceful, clearer state. Think of this as a shortcut to figuring out why you feel the way you do, gaining clarity, and maybe having some insights without getting lost in loads of complex psych stuff. So building on that feeling of mental overwhelm we started with, Green kicks off with a pretty radical idea. He says the source of our suffering, it's not out there, it's closer, much closer. He talks about pain versus suffering. Pain is like the first arrow. It happens.
A tough situation, physical pain, whatever. It's kind of inevitable.
But suffering, he says, that's the second arrow. That's the story we layer on top.
Right, the mental narrative.
Exactly. So pain happens, but suffering, according to him, that's optional. It comes from how we think about the pain. His big idea is that external stuff is basically neutral. Events don't have built-in meaning.
Until we give it to them.
Yes, our minds assign the meaning, and that drives how we feel. We're living, as he puts it, in the world of thought.
Yeah.
And just recognizing that is supposed to be freeing, like it breaks an automatic loop.
It sounds incredibly liberating, definitely. But I can see how for many people it might also be, well, a bit hard to swallow initially.
Sure.
When something really bad happens, it feels inherently negative, right? So how does just knowing it's neutral actually help when you're in the middle of it?
That's the key question, isn't it?
I think the core takeaway, like you said, is that it shifts your whole orientation. If you can start to genuinely grasp, even intellectually at first, that the event itself doesn't hold the meaning until you provide it, then suddenly the power isn't entirely out there anymore. It puts the agency back inside you. And that, right there, is the first massive step toward lessening that second arrow, reducing the suffering part.
Okay, let's unpack this next bit then, because it's a pretty radical idea that suffering isn't caused by the outside world, but by something much closer to home, our own brain.
Right.
It feels really counterintuitive. Your brain, its job is to protect you, right? But Nguyen suggests it might actually be the source of your stress.
Yeah, it seems like a total paradox.
So what's the deal with this evolutionary wiring he talks about? Why are we seemingly built to overthink?
It is completely counterintuitive, you're right. The very thing designed for survival can end up creating our anxiety. Evolutionarily speaking, it makes sense. Our brains had to be alert, scanning for danger.
Like the rustle in the bushes example.
Exactly. Could be a threat. Better safe than sorry. But now, in our world, that same survival mode gets triggered by, an email or what someone said or worrying about the future.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
Sending a text and then agonizing over it for hours.
Totally. That's the overthinking loop. Yeah. And Nguyen makes this really helpful distinction here, which I think is crucial. He separates thoughts from thinking.
Okay.
So thoughts are just those fleeting things, images, words, ideas that pop up. They just drift through.
Like clouds.
Kind of, yeah. But thinking, that's when we grab onto those thoughts. We engage, we analyze, we chew on them. Overanalyze, really.
Right.
The thoughts themselves, not the problem. It's the thinking, the overthinking that fuels the suffering. It's our attachment to the thought, our engagement with it.
Okay, so here's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Your brain, which is supposed to protect you, might actually be the source of your stress because it's wired to overthink, and we suffer when we latch onto those thoughts.
Precisely.
So if that's the case, how do we get out of it? How do we access this natural state of peace he talks about? Especially without trying to force happy thoughts all the time. Because that often feels fake, right?
Right. That forced positivity thing rarely works long term.
Nguyen reframes it. He says, you don't need to force happy thoughts. Your natural state, he calls it peace, joy, love, it's already in you. It becomes accessible when you just pause the thinking. Happiness isn't something you manufacture. It just shows up when the internal commentary quiets down.
It emerges.
Yeah. And then he brings in Sydney Banks' 3 principles as sort of the foundation of how we experience life from the inside out. He names them: mind, thought, and consciousness.
Yeah.
So what does this all mean? How do we tap into this natural state of peace without constantly trying to think happy? What are these principles really telling us?
It's a deep concept, and like you said, it really challenges how we're conditioned to operate, doesn't it?
Definitely.
We're always looking outside for happiness or trying to mentally wrestle ourselves into feeling good. The idea of not chasing it, but just letting it surface. It's different.
So how do the principles fit it? Mind, thought, consciousness.
Okay, so simply put, mind is like the universal intelligence, the energy behind everything. The source code, maybe?
The potential.
Yeah, the potential, the intelligence. Thought is the tool we use, the mental energy, the images and ideas that flow from that mind.
Okay.
And consciousness is our awareness. It's what makes those thoughts real to us. It brings thought to life in our experience.
So mind is the power, thought is the form it takes, consciousness is how we perceive it.
That's a good way to put it. It's these three working together constantly that create our entire moment-to-moment reality from the inside out. Understanding this inside-out nature is huge. It shows why quieting the thinking lets that natural state emerge.
Because the natural state is well-being.
Exactly. It's our default setting. It's the constant stream of thinking, powered by mind and made real by consciousness, that usually covers it up.
Okay, so this isn't about passivity or becoming a zombie.
Not at all.
It's about accessing a different kind of power, maybe. Imagine setting goals from clarity, not from fear or feeling like you're lacking something.
Yes, exactly. Inspired action versus compulsive action.
So practically, how do we start quieting the mind? And Green offers some concrete tools, right, to interrupt that thinking loop.
He does. He gives practical methods.
Like the PAUSE acronym. I saw that. P-A-U-S-E, pause, allow, untangle, shift, expand.
Stop the reaction. Allow the thought without fighting it. Untangle yourself from its grip. Shift your focus gently. Expand your perspective. It's a great little sequence.
And other mindfulness stuff, too, just creating space.
Yeah, creating that observer perspective.
And he's clear, this non-thinking isn't about doing nothing. It's about action that comes from intuition, from being present, free from that mental clutter.
Right. Acting from clarity, not compulsion.
He talks about inspired goals, the ones that feel light, energizing, because they come from that clear space, not the heavy ones tied to fear or needing to prove something.
That distinction is really powerful. You can feel the difference in your body when a goal comes from inspiration versus obligation or fear.
And creativity flows better, too, apparently, when the thinking mind steps back.
Makes sense. Less analysis, more allowing.
And also, connection. Feeling more connected to yourself, others, life, when you're not stuck in negative thought loops. It allows love and creativity room to breathe.
That natural connection emerges.
For making it stick day to day, he suggests things like journaling, taking little moments of stillness, maybe even tweaking your environment to support quiet moments.
And it's so important to remember, these are actionable steps. The pause thing, mindfulness, they're not just nice ideas. They're practical tools you can use right now.
Yeah.
The point isn't to magically eliminate all thoughts. That's impossible. It's about changing your relationship to them, gaining perspective, creating space.
You can hear something else, like intuition.
Exactly. And that allows a different kind of knowing to guide you. It leads to being more effective, sure, but also just more, joyful. Because you're acting from peace, not constantly chasing it.
Imagine if every event you faced, you could see it not as inherently good or bad, but just as it is.
Yeah.
Wow. How much less stress would that bring?
A huge amount.
That ties into another big idea in the book. Judgment. All those labels, good, bad, they're just mental constructs, right? Mental labels we slap onto reality.
According to this perspective, yes. Just labels.
And learning to see past them, to see events neutrally, is a massive key to reducing suffering.
It really is. It dials down the emotional reactivity.
And when that mental noise, that judging mind, quiets down, what steps in? You mentioned it.
Intuition, that inner knowing.
Right. Nguyen really emphasizes this, that clarity you get in the present moment, that intuitive sense, becomes a really powerful guide.
More reliable than overthinking, often.
Yeah. Decisions made from that quiet clarity often feel truer, more effective than the ones we agonize over for days. He even suggests ways to recognize it, like gut feelings, body sensations, maybe noticing synchronicities. That feeling of inner calm helps you tell it apart from just fear-based thoughts.
Distinguishing the signal from the noise.
Exactly. And here's a really cool part. Letting go of the mental chatter actually creates space for serendipity. He calls them miracles sometimes.
Yeah, that's a lovely way to put it.
Sudden insights, unexpected helpful encounters, creative breakthroughs, things that seem to just pop up when we stop trying so hard to figure everything out.
It really shifts the whole paradigm, doesn't it? What's fascinating here is how deeply intertwined our ability to perceive neutrally is with our capacity to access our deepest wisdom.
Yeah.
And even, as you said, invite these unexpected positive things. When we stop needing to label everything instantly, we just create more openness, a wider lens.
Letting life unfold a bit more.
Exactly. And intuition gets clearer. It's not some mystical foghorn. It's just clear seeing that arises when the mind is calm, and that space for serendipity, for miracles. It suggests sometimes the best answers come not from more thinking, but from creating space for them to arrive.
Of course, a shift this profound isn't without its challenges. It's not like you read the book and boom, you're enlightened, right?
Definitely not. Old habits die hard.
So what happens when your old habits, that ingrained thinking, try to pull you back in?
Nguyen addresses that directly. He acknowledges that resistance is totally normal. When you start questioning your thoughts, relying less on thinking, the ego, your old patterns, they'll likely push back.
How does that show up? Like doubt, fear?
Yeah, doubt, fear, maybe just that strong urge to go back to analyzing everything again because it feels familiar, even if it's uncomfortable.
Okay, so it's expected.
Completely expected. But he doesn't just leave you there. He offers a kind of roadmap for moving forward, for strengthening this non-thinking way of being, making it more your default.
What does that involve?
Things like consistent daily practices could be meditation, could just be consciously noticing your thought loops without judgment.
Yeah.
Journaling about your insights and challenges, maybe finding a community or others exploring this, and just ongoing self-observation.
You've really hit on something crucial there. Resistance is normal. It's not a sign you're feeling.
Not at all. It's a sign that shifts are happening.
And this path isn't about reaching some endpoint or becoming passive. We talked about that.
Yeah.
It's about acting from clarity, not compulsion.
Exactly. So the next steps aren't a checklist to tick off. It's more like a continuous, gentle practice. Observing the mind, returning to clarity again and again.
And that consistent practice brings the lasting benefits.
Absolutely. Deeper peace, stronger intuition, just gradually over time. More capacity for living from that quieter space.
So we've taken a deep dive today into Joseph Nguyen's Don't Believe Everything You Think. And the core message, wow, it really is transformative, isn't it?
It truly is.
That so much of our struggle comes not from the world outside, but from our relationship with our own thoughts.
The interpretation.
And the really hopeful part is that peace, clarity. It's actually our natural state. It's always there, accessible, just by learning to quiet that busy, overthinking mind.
It's about uncovering, not creating.
Yeah. So to leave you with something to think about, or perhaps not think too much about, considering how much of your reality is shaped by your interpretation, your mental labels, what just one area in your life, maybe starting small, where you could practice seeing things a bit more neutrally. Where could you try releasing the label of good or bad just for a little while and simply observe what unfolds?